We really need to rethink what we mean by the end of the world or the apocalypse, with Christian fundamentalists thinking Jesus is coming back any minute to usher in some kind of theocracy or the beginning of the end, and with venture capitalists and investment capitalists putting billions into disaster capitalism as we speak. It's the biggest growing market in the stock market. And the rest of us wondering, is this the end? We need to address this question. What does the end of the world look like? And are we thinking about it in the wrong way? I think we probably are. And I think that's because certainly in the West, we have this framework that we've inherited that is millenarial, that is all about a sudden and for everyone end of the world. So I want to look at that. It's been there all through history, in Britain particularly in the 17th century, so after King Charles died and before King Charles II came into power. That time of chaos and uncertainty, there were all these millenarial cults. And then, of course, we had the great arms race of the Cold War, when everyone thought we were 1 minute to midnight and the world was about to end in a complete nuclear war, which, of course, could still happen. And now, with increasing climate change and chaos and uncertainty already happening all around us, but in some places worse than others. And really, that's the point that I want to come to. From the story of the flood onwards, we've inherited this idea that the end of the world is a single event that covers everybody at the same time, that we all go together or begin together. We have in the West this linear idea of time that's been around since the Axial Age for over 2,500 years. The time is a straight line with a beginning and an end, rather than a cyclical time, which you might see in, say, Hinduism or Jainism or Buddhism. And we have this idea that there is an end. The word apocalypse means to reveal, this idea that everything will be revealed and that everything will stop together. And even if you're a person who's now an atheist or agnostic or non-religious, you may anyway have inherited this idea and this fear of an end of the world. And so within the climate change movement, for example, there are people who are talking about what do we do about the end of things or the breakdown or collapse of civilization. And within Marxism, I nearly said a right-wing phrase, cultural Marxism. Within Marxism, there's this idea that there are phases to history, that there is a collapse of one time and the beginning of another. So that on the left, there is this inheritance of Christian ideas of millenarianism, of the end of things, of a linear idea of time. And I want us to shake that off. Both the idea that it's for everybody and the idea that it's an event. So the first thing is, we all die alone. Okay, that's fundamentally true. Even if you think in non-dualistic terms of a non-self, you die on your own, even if we all die at the same time. We all die alone. And we die twice in a way. We have a long death and a sudden death. Like I'm 50, I've been dying for 50 years, right? So we're all dying slowly and we all die suddenly. So those things are universal. And I might die quietly in my bed one day, surrounded by my loved ones, or I might drown somewhere. But either way, I will die suddenly, and I will have had a long, drawn-out death. Those things are true. We don't have really a single apocalypse. Some people experience a horrific ending, and for them, that apocalypse happens then. If you're trying to cross the Mediterranean right now to get into Britain, and you're on a small boat, and your boat capsizes, your apocalypse, your end of the world is happening right now. If you're someone in Palestine who's being bombed, whose house has collapsed, who's dying because of lack of resources and medicine because you've been blocked, if you're someone in a refugee camp who's been there for generations and you've been mistreated by some peacekeeping force or some NGO representative, then you're already experiencing your apocalypse right now. And people who are wondering, when will it be? When will this end of the world be? Are often in countries where we already have incredible privilege. And they don't realize that the end of the world is happening for people now. It's not a one-off event and it's not equal and fair. Some people are experiencing the apocalypse. Some people never will. And so we need to think in different terms, really. We need to recognize, first of all, that whether or not there is a cataclysmic end of humanity shock, even if that happens, you still individually die. You die alone. even if that happens. And even if the world becomes perfect tomorrow and there is an end to injustice and an end to war and climate change is fixed tomorrow, you will still die. That's natural and normal and healthy. And you will still suffer. It seems that we all do. And so don't be afraid of the end of the world. Whether you're a person of faith or of good faith, whether you believe in a God or not, stop being afraid of an apocalypse, of an end of the world, because it makes no difference to the fundamental truth that we all suffer and we all die. Those things remain true either way. So the question then becomes, as it always is in Buddhism, how do we reduce suffering in ourselves and for other people? How do we live our lives in ways that makes friends with that fundamental truth and comes to terms with it? And then once we've come to terms with that, once we've said, okay, I'm okay with the fact, with the grown-up truth of my mortality, with the grown-up truth that the self is an illusion and that it comes to an end every moment and is rebirthed every moment. Once I come to that non-ego space, I am then free to be able to work with compassion towards reducing suffering in others. I will no longer have this urge to run to the hills with a big crate of baked beans and a rifle and just sit it out and fend for myself. Once you let go of that, then you start to be able to be free from fear in order to love and have compassion and build community. Not disappear into a bunker like the tech bros are with their basements, their fortified basements that they keep all over the world in different countries, so they're always near one of them. We don't have that in individualistic mentality. Ironically, once we realize we all die alone, we start to be able to live for one another. So we have understood the end of the world wrong. There is no the end of the world. There is a constant ending and renewing of all things. And what does end when you die is the reality you constructed. And I think that's worth pausing on and mourning about. You know, we construct our reality, right? So I have 50 years of mapping out a reality, the smells, the histories, the places, some of which have gone. And when I die, the world I constructed, that comes to an end. For everyone, my world ends when I die, and everything else is somewhat theoretical for me at that point. And so everybody has their own end of everything, and it's the end of us. And once we realize these hard but clearly scientific and objective truths, we can be at peace and we can have courage, and then we are liberated to love.